A lot of people gonna be mad at me for this one. Yeah, MVT. Ain't holding no punches, you know. It's the Coyote Gun. Give it to you every way you want. Part of Zuvier. Soup, soup. Dog face. I got a 3-digit phone number 666. I got Satan on the three-way. He selling some bricks. I got Jesus on the text.
What's moving? This is the City Connection magazine. My name is Javon Johnson, and tonight we have a real serious topic to discuss. I have a special guest speaker tonight by the name of Michael J. Muhammad. How you doing tonight, sir?
Well, thank you.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you on our show. I see that you've been doing a lot of public service for the community. How long have you been in public service, and what inspired your interest towards public service for your people and humanity?
Well, I've been engaged in serving the public since I was 14 years old. So that's roughly about 23 years of my life, more than half of my life. I got engaged in community service, public service, because I saw a need for the expression and a need for or an outlet, I should say, for young people particularly, to have a voice in the ever-changing world. And so at a very young age, I got involved, and I've remained involved for that entire time, and as the old song goes, I ain't tired yet.
I understand that.
Yes,
Definitely understand that. Now, it's a serious issue at hand that appeared to be overlooked, and I stand correction, actually was overlooked by many, but you brought the attention back to the public eye, and the situation with Mr. Omar Johnson. Rest in peace. Tell me a little bit about the Omar Johnson case and bring us up to date with what's currently going on with that situation.
Joshua Amal Johnson, also known as Omar, is interesting. Most people know him as Omar, and that wasn't his name. But his middle name, Amal, he didn't really like it, and he didn't like people to really know his government name, and so people would confuse it with Omar, and so that stuck, and that was his preferred name. I mentored Omar, was very close to him. As his mother calls me his godfather, he called me uncle, since he was 12 years old. And I was very fond of Omar, and I saw a lot of hope, a lot of promise in him, and I can never forget, as long as I have sanity and clear mind, May 20, 2013, when I got the call telling me that Omar had been killed. It was as if one of my own children had been killed. And that pain is still very fresh, and I'm motivated daily by it. When Omar was killed, I initially took the thought that anything goes, and I wanted to take to the streets and take young people with me and tear it up. I really did. But when I got to his mother and his family, all of those who had gathered, I saw that there was a sincere and tremendous need in the people for direction, for guidance. And so I paused. For a few days, I went to my home, and I didn't come out, honestly, for 3 or 4 days. I talked to God, I prayed, I cried, I talked to God, I prayed, I cried. And I asked God to show me what to do. And in the midst of all that was going on, the phone calls, the emails, the text messages, the social media direct messaging and inboxes, asking me, Muhammad, what are we going to do? I was given clarity. And when I asked God, what should I do? He said, walk, as God is my witness. And I pondered on that, walk, walk, walk. And in pondering on that, I said, we'll walk for justice. We'll walk for Omar. And I went to my graphic designer. I hadn't talked to his family or anyone. I went to my graphic designer and I gave him what the image was in my head. And because I am of the hip hop generation, I know that our young people are moved by hip hop. So in my mind, I saw an image, a walk for justice, a walk for Omar, but I wanted the words justice for Omar to stand out above all else. And so when we completed the design, the original design that was the t-shirts that everyone wore looked like the Run DMC logo.
Right, it did.
And that was a part of the inspiration for that. We single-handedly, through that process, during the week leading up from Omar's murder to his funeral, we changed the mentality of the people from the traditional response, which is rest in peace, to justice for Omar. So we created a movement. We created a movement. When it came time, a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days, it was Monday when Omar was killed. That Friday, I led the people in a demonstration. We didn't secure any permits from the city. We didn't ask permission because I didn't think that we should secure permits and ask permission, in that they didn't ask permission before they killed our brother. And so I said, to hell with decorum and to hell with trying to get along. I wanted to give voice to the people, but also direction, so that it would not become a situation where more of our people's lives would be lost. Being cognizant of the fact that there was a lot of anger and that our young people really don't care too much about life, theirs or anyone else's.
Right.
I had to give direction. Many preachers, community leaders reached out to me and tried to give direction, but I was moving off of a vision from God. And so while I heard them, I could not adhere to them. And I assembled the people at Omar's home where his mother lives, and we took the people from our community where his mother lives to the very place where he was assassinated. And one of the reasons that I wanted to take the people from where he lived to where he was murdered was because traditionally, when our people get angry and want to exercise their voice, we do it in a bubble. We do it in our own community where very few people can hear us. But he was killed in one of the most prestigious communities, in one of the most prestigious corners in our city, there in Ghent, 21st Street, the business corridor of the white community. And so I took literally a few hundred black people, young, middle-aged, elderly, in the streets. Some wanted to walk on the sidewalks, and I told them, no, take to the streets. And we literally shut down traffic in both directions. And we came to the very prestigious business corridor of West 21st Street under the shouts of no justice, no peace, justice for Omar, loud ringlings, buses going by, the drivers blowing horns, people parking their cars, getting out, joining us. It was a sight to behold. and all of our people orderly under the command of my voice, we surrounded the bank where he was killed, and we forbade them to do business. We shut the bank down.
That's amazing.
And so that was the initiation of a movement that some think has dissipated, but time dictates the agenda. Since Omar was assassinated, murdered by the Norfolk police, we have had four persons to be shot, 3 to be killed by the police in that time, since that time, a little over a year ago. But that's in Norfolk,
right.
Not to speak of the surrounding Hampton Roads area, Virginia, and throughout the country. As we know, we have Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and others.
Yes.
Our brother in New York who was choked to death by the police, and others. It's a daily occurrence, honestly.
Yes, it is.
And so, because time dictates the agenda, we always have to be cognizant of where we are and what the time is. We are in the seat of white supremacy. We are in the birthplace of slavery as it was known in America. The first ships landed just a few miles from here in Jamestown, Virginia, right here in Norfolk, Virginia at the Portsmouth Port. This is where our people were brought into bondage. So the mentality is not as progressive as it is in other places where people sought freedom and independence. The mentality of the Virginia Negro has always been docile, even at a time when over 100 cities in America rioted at the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In April of 1968. That was not the case in Norfolk.
That's deep.
So the white supremacists have always seen this area as an area where they could control the Negro. So when we broke free from the chains and took to the streets, we didn't ask no permission. We exhibited utter and total independence of the thought of our oppressor. That was a dose and a sign of what is to come. But just as with anything, it has to be done in doses, as not to lose the strength of the objective. And so I have had to, in leading this movement, make some very conscious decisions on how we move. Shortly after that first move in May of 2013, there was a lot of talk about the video from the bank, the video from the police car.
Yes, it was.
And people were saying, why have we not seen the video? So again, I was wondering, what should we do? And we were coming up on 4 months from the time Omar had been killed, but also what would have been his 23rd birth anniversary, September the 19th, 2013. And I was being pressured by the people, what are we going to do? How are we going to remember Omar? So I said, we go back to the streets. And we took an even larger crowd back to the bank, and we shut them down again. Didn't ask no permission, didn't secure no permits. Hundreds of people moving in the street, tens and tens of Norfolk police officers, some even in riot gear, some in with canine dogs and others. At one point, one of the police commanders, I believe a captain, walked up into the crowd because we had shut the bank down to ask me, can you all please just move to the sidewalk so they could conduct business? And on camera, it's recorded. He asked me that, and I repeated to the people what he asked me. And I told him, hell no. I said, did they shut the bank down the day that they killed our brother? I said, well, God damn it, we shutting the bank down today. And we shut the bank down a second time. And as I was leaving, and we were leaving the bank, a Negro reporter, you know, they always find a Negro in the woodpile. You know, they always go find some bootlicking Tom, some Negro to do their bidding. A Negro named Jonathan Costin from WVEC 13. They won't even cover me on 13 because of the way I handled Jonathan Costin. He shoved the microphone in my face and said to me, he said, there's a lot of talk about, and the purpose of this particular move that time was to release the tapes. So he said to me, he said, if they don't release the tapes, he said in a real aggressive manner, and I thought he was trying to provoke a reaction that would cause problems, you know? If they don't release the tapes, what are you gonna do? And I dressed that Negro down right there in front of his own cameras. And that night I got a call from Regina Mobley, who's a friend of mine. And she said, Michael, what I saw you saying on that tape, your mother would be ashamed. I said, Regina, my mother follows me, so she wouldn't be ashamed. But I began to literally sit at my dining room table that night and ponder over the question that he raised. If they don't release the tapes, what will I do? And it became as crystal to me, as crystal clear as the nose on my face. In the initial phase of this, God told me to walk, but it was being pressed in my spirit. If they don't release the tapes, we walked. Now I run. What do you mean run, God? I'm not understanding. And then it became clear. Run for the seat of power in the city. So I announced that I would run for the mayor of the city of Norfolk. And I met with Omar's mother and some others, and I told them, I said, you all want the tapes released? I'll force them to release the tapes. I'll run for mayor. And just as sure as I'm sitting here talking to you, as we began to really and aggressively press our campaign, our historic effort, I was the first black man to run for the mayor of the city of Norfolk, the first Muslim in the state of Virginia history to run for mayor, the youngest to run for mayor. We made history on many levels. I ran, I pressed the issue, they released the tapes.
I like that.
And so what some saw as a failed bid for mayor, it wasn't a failure. It was an absolute awakening of a sleeping giant. The Bible asked the question, there is a lion asleep in Judah, who will awaken him? And we as a people here in Norfolk, Virginia are like a sleeping lion. We are the king of the jungle. But who's going to wake us up? So we have begun the process. And whether people know it or not, this was inspired by Omar and his assassination. I would never have run for the mayor of the city of Norfolk had they not killed Omar.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about the response from the city of Norfolk?
I'm going to answer that. You asked me another question. I'm sorry, I want to answer it. You asked, where's that movement now?
Yes.
Time is going to dictate the agenda because, again, as I said, they've killed 3 people since then, shot 4 in Norfolk, but all over the country. See, we gave voice to a people who were voiceless, but now they see that the big cat up on the hill is really a pussy cat. And we are a lion. So when the time comes, no one will be able to tame a lion that has been asleep for over 400 years. Now, the response of the city of Norfolk, I think that it is an appropriate response from a slave master to its slaves.
Elaborate on that, bro.
They don't respect us as human beings. Norfolk is a city of over 245,000 citizens. It is said that 46% are African American. I don't believe that number. It is said that 48% are Caucasian. The reason I don't believe that 46% number is because those numbers come from the census report. And you know, unlike white folk, we don't tell all our business. You don't know who's in my house. You don't know who lives in my grandmother's house. You see?
Yeah.
We ain't telling you our business because it ain't none of your damn business. So the census is a little skewed. It's not accurate. Our numbers are more, the more accurate number is the visibility of our school system, which is 68% African American. See? So when you have a city that is, whether it's 46% or greater African American, but you have an 8-member councilmatic body, that does not reflect that number. You have 3 African Americans on council and 5 whites that govern. And the way that the African Americans are elected through a ward system does not give us an opportunity to have a greater visibility on that body, except we think out the box. And somebody that looks like you and me runs for mayor and has the backing of the people and is successful. So then we break that number down from 3 to 5 to 4 to 4. And it becomes a more evenly or more balanced number. But the current system, even with a black city manager, we've had black police chiefs. We have a black school superintendent. But what the hell does any of that mean? When we have a $1.2 billion annual budget and we don't see 10% of that in our communities. See? Those black people, the CEO of Norfolk, an African American black man, Marcus Jones, the school superintendent, a black man, Dr. King, I can't call his first name. What does that mean? These men become icing on a cake, but it's a poison white cake. Down to the last morsel of the cake, it just has a pretty and inviting chocolate icing. You see? So the response from the city at the death of Omar, at the death of the others, and the shooting of the others in our city has been the type of response you expect a slave master to have toward his slave, because they don't view the slave as another human being, as a fellow human being. They view the slave as property. So they did not charge those who would kill the slave with murder. They charged them with destruction of property. So it's hard for us to get a charge and a conviction at the death of a black man. Just a few weeks ago, there was a report that said since 1998, I believe it was, 15 people have been shot and killed by the Norfolk police and not one charged. You mean to tell me that there was never, ever a time where one of them made an error, a mistake, and lapse in judgment, and you could have found something that we could have brought to the public light, that they could have been corrected, and we could go forward? Not once. I take that back. It was not 98. It was 2008, because it was over the governing time of the current Commonwealth's attorney, who was also an African American, another boot-licking, butt-kissing, buck-dancing nigger. And I say that from the depths of my heart because these people don't mean us any good. See? And so their response has been that of a slave master to the slave.
Now, with that being said, are there any more marches planned to enlighten the youth as well as the adults pertaining to the injustices of us as human beings?
I wanted to and had begun the initial process of holding a commemorative, so to speak, walk, march, whatever you want to call it. This past Friday, September the 19th, which would have been Omar's 24th birthday. We're now a year and some later from his murder, assassination. And we wanted to tie that into Michael Brown and the other movements around the country.
Definitely.
And it was fire in my spirit for a time, but then it dissipated. And I decided to hold off because I don't think that I should call or lead the next wave of the movement. I think the people should do it. See, it's always been their effort to find out who's leading this thing, and we take out the leader and we kill the movement. That's cheap. That's punk stuff. We have too many examples of that not to be able to avert or avoid that. And so I'm going to let it bubble up in the spirit of the people. And when the people move, I'll be there to guide them, to advise them, to participate in whatever way they see necessary. I don't know what will be on the hearts of the people. I remember when we made the first move, a young brother who's no longer with us, may God be pleased with him, was walking with us. And there was a middle-aged white woman in her car who was irrespective of the crowd, and she was nudging her car forward to the crowd. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, please let them by." And she'd nudge more. I said, "Ma'am, please." And she'd nudge again. And finally I said, "God damn it, don't move that car another inch." And she froze. And the young brothers surrounded me and they said, "Muhammad, you want us to turn this so-and-so over?" I said, "No." I stopped them. See, they were ready to set it off. I said, "No, this ain't the time. But I may not be around the next time." You see? So time is going to dictate the agenda. Yeah. Time is moving. My teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, taught me that time dictates agenda. And when you see the time moving, you see, and acts taking place in cities all over America that show that there is no regard for us as human beings. When you have a young black man as one of my favorite preachers in America, a white Catholic priest by the name of Father Michael Flagger, who I've had many opportunities to work with, dine with. He is a brother. As he said, if Michael Brown can be killed for disobeying a police instruction, and Trayvon Martin can be killed with Skittles and tea, so many other acts against our people and the various reasoning behind them. How then did a man scale the fence, the gate at the White House and run the distance of a football field, make it into the executive residence, and not one hair on his head was harmed? See, black life don't have value. And keep in mind that the occupant of that executive mansion is a black man with a black family, and the security of that man and his family does not have the same priority to these people as his predecessors do. So the devaluing of black life on all fronts.
Yes.
The people see it, they hear it, they feel it, and eventually they will respond to it. And it won't be because Michael Muhammad or anybody else told them to, but the spirit of freedom, justice, and equality will rise up in them because it's natural to be free. It's natural to be justified. It's natural to be equal. It is not natural to be oppressed.
Now, with that being said, you know, you spoke about certain things trickling down. How do you feel about the black on black crime that's been chronically rising and plaguing our communities as a result of these current events that's been taking place?
You know, you asked me earlier what made me get involved, and that's one of the things that I left out. At a very young age, I saw so much death in our communities. And by the time I was 19 years old, one that I loved and admired, I was mentored and taught by, he was my brother. Cece, you know, Cedric Cochran had been killed. And I developed such a hatred for murder, black on black, that I really, really gave my life to this cause. And from that time to this, I've hosted throughout America over 20 forums on black crime and violence. I've spoken on college campuses and university campuses throughout America and in different parts of the world, in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, in Havana, Cuba, and in other parts of the world that I've spoken on that very subject of black on black crime, violence, and murder. I have been made in a special kind of way by God because of my unique suffering, you know?
Yes.
That I literally, and I don't say this figuratively, I mean literally, can feel the pain that a mother and father feels at the loss of a child. I literally anguish internally and suffer at the hearing of the loss of one. I am sought after by families all over to speak at funerals at the death of their loved one, particularly when it's murder, because they believe I have a message for those young people. And it is my life's goal to make an impact in that area. I don't believe that we will ever be who God created us to be until we see one another as God sees us. The scholars and the scientists say that in one ejaculation, there are tens of millions, even upwards of 100 million sperm emitted. And when a sperm is emitted into the vaginal tract of a woman, as those sperm travel with the goal of fertilizing the egg. Now, this is the process that God put forward for human development. Out of the tens of millions of sperm traveling, only one sperm reaches and fertilizes the egg.
Mm.
The other sperm become food for that sperm.
Mm.
Once the sperm fertilizes the egg, there's a clot of blood. That clot then goes through a process and becomes a fetus. And eventually it becomes a new life that forges a way for itself out of the mother into a new world. What the mother goes through in that process, scientists say, is the closest she will ever be to death without dying. The child is the closest it will be to death without dying. The mother reaches far beyond the decimals of pain that are said to be sustainable without losing consciousness to bring forth a life. That life is now in the world. That mother has hopes. She has dreams. She has visions and goals for her child. For that child to go into a world of uncertainty and to be murdered at the hands of someone who looks like them. See? Is not homicide. But if I suffer what you suffer, if I go through what you go through, if I am hurt by what you are hurt by, if I, am bit by the same dog that bit you, then I am you and you are me. So for me to kill you is not to kill you, but to kill myself. So it's not homicide, it's suicide, self-murder. I remember as a little child, before I even knew anything of the Bible, my grandfather would always say there are two sins that God will never forgive you for: blasphemy and suicide. Well, if we are actively engaged in the process of self-murder, how can God have favor on a people that he wants to bless and give the land to? He can't. So I am determined that if God blesses me to live, that I'm going to make an impact in changing the mentality of us as a people that makes us see each other in such a way that we feel that our only resolve is to pull a trigger and take one another's life. What do you look like? Killing your brother, your sister, and taking the breath of life from them that you don't even have the power to give. When a person is born, when a baby is born and takes that first breath, it is called inspiration. The indwelling of the spirit of the divine creator. But when a person dies and they release that breath of life, it is called expiration. The exiting of the Spirit of God. So the Bible asks the question in the book of Malachi. The preacher uses it as a hustle on the people. But it's much deeper than that. And that question is, will a man rob God? And we see God being robbed every day when we see our young people being buried as a result of murder and never realizing the potential and the gift that God has invested in them. So yes, men rob God every day. There's no way that we can be who and what God has ordained us to be if we continue that process. If, I don't care what your religious persuasion is, if you believe in the scriptures of God, if you believe in God, every prophet, every messenger, every warner came through the womb of a woman. And God has not changed his way yet. I don't care how masterful these people think they are. Even when they want to go into the lab and create a test tube baby, they still have to put it in the womb of a woman and allow that process to come forward. So if that was the process then, it's the process now. Every child that comes from the womb of a woman has potential for greatness. And when you snuff out that life, you take away that potential. So now we have before us a complex problem. How do we stop the killing? See, I don't believe that we have the moral strength or authority to organize, to galvanize, and to say to the powers that be, stop killing us, the police, you know, if we killing ourselves. You look crazy, you look silly that you would galvanize by the hundreds in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, of Florida, of New York, of Norfolk, I don't care where. You look silly to do that when somebody else takes your life. But you don't say a damn thing when you take your own life. We have to take responsibility for ourselves and the gift that God has given us, which is life. The cure for AIDS, the cure for cancer, the cure for sickle cell anemia, the cure for all of the social ills and problems that ill affect human beings will come through the womb of a woman. And so when we snuff out that life, man, we deprive ourselves of what God has to offer. When Mary, Mother Mary, was pregnant and her womb was full with a new life, the people in her day wanted to stone her to death and in so doing kill her and her baby because she was not pregnant by what they saw as conventional means, meaning a husband and a wife. So they wanted to stone her. So she fled Palestine and she ran and sought comfort in Egypt, that the scripture may be fulfilled, out of Egypt have I called my son. So when she ran for cover, she gave birth to Jesus in very poor conditions, to the point that they called it a manger, surrounded by animals and vagrants. But whose condition is just like that if that ain't our condition? See? Sweet little Jesus boy, born in a manger. Sweet little Jesus boy. I just didn't know who you were. But how can I say that about a man 2,000 years ago that I never met and sit next to you and not see that same potential in you? See? So when our young people stop looking at each other with hate in their heart, as you should have for your enemy and God's enemy, and have love in our heart for one another as God has for us and he has for his people, that's the only way to live. I don't know a pain for me greater than seeing a mother in turmoil and anguish over the loss of her child. To conclude you know, that question, I think that that is the most heinous act that we can commit, and that is to kill ourselves. We got to fall in love with each other. Think of it like this. Brother. B-R-O-T-H-E-R. Brother. If you take the B-R off, what you have is other. Your brother is your other self. So to kill your brother is to kill yourself. To rob your brother is to rob yourself. See? And when we start thinking like that and seeing one another like that, our eyes begin to open, and we can't have a hate in our heart for one another that we do. Yes, we may, cause one another some turmoil. We may rub up against each other the wrong way, but still shopping still. And that's all right. We get angry with one another, and that's all right, but we live to fight another day.
Yes, we do.
But when you take out a gun, man, and you pull the trigger, and you leave your brother laying dead, and then you go and eat some sloppy meal without concern or consideration for what you did, you're no longer a human being, you're a subhuman. You see? And you're not fit to be in the society with civilized human beings. So we have a tremendous burden in front of us. I have a burden and a job, just like those who've gone before me, because it's a hard job when you're working amongst the people and you want them to see themselves the way that I see them. Mm-hmm. And then one from amongst us kills another from amongst us. I'm in a very difficult situation because I find myself in these situations, man, I'm mentoring both sides, the deceased and the killer. Mm. It's a difficult place to be.
Well, Mr. Muhammad, with that being said, are there any future plans for running for mayor again for the city of Norfolk?
I don't know. Time dictates the agenda. We made a tremendous effort. And I'm talking about we had this city rocking and reeling. And during the course of our campaign, guess what? We stopped the killing. We had an energy moving in the last few months of the campaign that people began to see what was going on and join on to it. We didn't have those shootings. I had a vision about 15 or more years ago that I've always wanted to remake and put my spin on a self-destruction style song, or a we all in the same game from the West Coast style song, And during the campaign, I said, this is my chance. So I pulled together some brothers and I gave them my vision, and a few sisters, and I gave them my vision, and I said, now go bring it back to me. And man, what they brought back to me, my brother went with me the night they called me. They said, you gotta come. You gotta come to the studio and see what we did. Mm-hmm. And they put the production on, and I'm telling you, I'm a strong black man. Oh, I cried like a baby because the talent, the gift, the skill that the young brothers and sisters exhibited, to not have known what one artist did and the other artist did, but to go into the studio off of what they had in their heart, they had in their mind, and to produce our song One Norfolk, and to come out the way that it did, man, only God could have done that. Only God could have done that. When I went the first time, they played about 2 or 3 artists' verses for me. And Michael from Studio X, shout out to Studio X in Virginia Beach. I'm telling you, man, them brothers, that's the place.
Yeah, we did a segment there. Very, very nice place.
Man, I'm telling you.
High quality.
And Mike let me hear 2 or 3 of the artists. And he said, all of them, I told all of them they had 8 bars, you know. And he said, you know, when are you going to come put yours down? He said, matter of fact, since you're here, go ahead and do it. I said, but I didn't think on anything. I don't have anything. He said, oh, don't worry about it. Just go in the studio and do what you do. And I'm telling you, man, I was so inspired by what I heard from them young brothers and sisters, the couple that I had heard at that time before the finished product. I went in the studio, and without even thinking, I said, Bismillah, which means in Arabic, it's Arabic for in the name of God. And I just opened my mouth, and I walked out the studio, and they told me, they said, do you know that you just laid down a perfect 8 bars to the penny on a 1-hitter quitter? I said, really? He said, man. Mike said, I went to the restroom and came back and you were done. I thought you were warming up. And we put that finished product out, and the people all over the country, I get so much feedback on that song. And I looked at it initially and said, man, they're saying May 6th, you know, May 6th, which was the election day. This only has a shelf life of a short period of time. But then the other day I listened to it again. I said, no, the wisdom that these young people are putting out, man, has a shelf life far beyond anything that we can comprehend.
That's right.
And it is a sign of something to come. So to answer that question, I don't know what the time will dictate and what the agenda will call for. But I have been in this thing, again, as I said before, 23 years, and I ain't tired yet. So if I get a call to do it, then I'll answer. But we got work to do. And that will determine what we will do. I get calls, emails, text messages, social media inboxes and direct messages every day, literally, Monday through Monday, about that very thing. Mothers in the street, people in the street, you gonna run again? People writing me, telling me, I just wish I would have known. I wish I could have helped. If you do it again, I'm there. So many people. And I'm humbled by that. But I do know that this system belongs to Satan. And I ain't trying to be Pharaoh over my own people, you know?
Right.
Except that I have something from God himself that will help me to free the people. But if you look in cities all over America where we have black mayors, we have had some tremendous black men to take the office and position of mayor, and they work diligently to destroy every one of them. They trump up charges on them, they lie on them, they persecute them. Look at our brother, our brilliant brother, young brother, in Detroit, Michigan. Kwame Kilpatrick, a man who I went in and worked on both of his campaigns in 2000 and in 2005 for his election. And I see that they've given the brother 28 years for corruption. I did a song with one of our local artists who I believe is going to become a very prominent national star in the hip hop world, Antique Taylor. And in the song, she made reference to boosting and that, which we know what that is. And I said, it's awkward to stand in a courtroom and be judged for stealing by people who stole you. Now imagine that. The audacity of a Caucasian man or woman to send down a sentence for stealing from a people who they stole. God damn, that's hypocrisy if I ever seen it. So to take our brother and put him in prison for 28 years for corruption, you corrupt being. The very being of corruption. Every law in the Federal Penal Code Book of America was broken in the establishment of America. Rape, murder, robbery, stealing. See? All of them were broke. But now you come and you want to persecute and prosecute. No, see, that ain't right. And I know that that's this system. And I don't want to be a part of that system unless what I'm doing is helping to tear down that system. That's why in the phone call that I received from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan during the campaign, where he spoke words of guidance and encouragement to me, he said, brother, you are doing your part to tear down Satan's web. Because systems come out of the minds of men like webs out of a spider. So in order to change the system, you have to change the mind. And what we did in running for mayor, challenging this system with all of the deficiencies that I have in my background and in my life, we broke the mold and we are helping to tear down Satan's web. So I go down in history regardless. My history is written. And my children can look at me and be proud and say, that's my daddy.
That's the king.
See?
That's the king.
So whether I run again or not, I don't know. I may want to run you. Or I may want to take one of these young sisters or young brothers and prop them up and run them. I don't know. But we got work to do.
You definitely do.
And I ain't tired yet.
Well, Mr. Muhammad, I want to thank you tonight.
Thank you.
For a very inspirational, powerful message to our youth.
Thank you.
And to the world.
Thank you.
My name is Javon Johnson.
Let me say this before you sign off. What you all are doing is very important. And I want you to know that. Because media, all right, and helping to get your people's message out is so important. Because whenever they want to destroy a people, propaganda precedes persecution and slaughter. And they use the media to tear man down before they go in and tear him down. Look at what they did to Saddam Hussein. Look at what they did to Muammar Gaddafi. Look at what they do to your own brothers in the media every day. That's why it's important for us to stop killing each other, because propaganda says that we are animals. So what you're doing with this City Connection, I'm proud of you all, because you are giving us an outlet for our expression and for our words. Nothing that I've said to you have I not said to white media, but you wouldn't know it because they won't print it. But I'm thankful that you all have taken this effort, and it's very important. So no matter how discouraged you get, no matter how difficult it comes, God doesn't put anything on you beyond your scope to bear. If you can conceive it as an idea, you can bring it into reality. That's why that movie Lucy, I'm very disappointed that they went and found some old funny looking white woman to play Lucy when Lucy was the name given to the bones that they found that were determined to be over 3 million years old in Africa.
Indeed.
You see?
Indeed.
And when you think of the process of the brain and using more than the general capacity of your brain to think yourself out of a box into a world that you control. You see? That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. And it's so important. So thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And continue to do good. All right.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say that here at the City Connection magazine, we represent bringing a spotlight to the urban community, to the voices of change, and to uplift humanity. One person at a time, one business at a time, one idea at a time. My name is Javon Johnson, and thank you, and good night.
All right.
A lot of people gonna be mad at me for this one. Yeah, MVT. Ain't holding no punches, you know. It's the Coyote Dawn.